Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the verse I read, He says in the Quran, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. That He says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has beautiful names. Allah Himself is saying this. That Allah has beautiful names. فَدْعُوهُ بِهَا. That call upon these names. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding each and every single one of us within the Quran that call upon these names. In the famous hadith which many of us will know, where Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said and he mentions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has 99 names. 99 names, 100 minus 1. And whoever internalizes these, man ahsaha dakhal al-jannah. Whoever internalizes these will gain entry into paradise. Many a times many muhaddithin have discussed of what this word ahsaha means. And many of us believe that it means the one who memorizes it. But usually in the Arabic language, the word for memorization is hafidha, the one who memorizes. So if a person who is memorizing, when a person is memorizing, this person, he would memorize this. But in this hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he uses the word ahsaha. So many muhaddithin have mentioned that this word, it means that a person internalizes them and he brings them into life. He reflects upon them and brings them into life. In Surah Mujadala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions one part, He says, أَحْصَاهُ اللَّهُ وَنَسُوهُ. So He's not talking about memorization. The word translated by the Mufassirin is Allah has recorded it. So recorded it can also be in memorization, but it can also mean that you internalize these. Let's look into a story. The story of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had told him once that go to Fir'aun, the Pharaoh of Egypt, and go to this Pharaoh and invite him towards Allah. Musa alayhi salam was a bit scared. He's like, I have to go stand in front of Fir'aun. And he was not standing in front of a man. Rather, he was standing in front of a whole army. The army of Egypt with Fir'aun, who is leading it. He was a bit scared, a bit worried, like how can I go and invite him? And that's when the fire, the burning tree happened, the fire took place, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Himself through the fire and spoke to Musa alayhi salam. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He says, Innani ana Allah. Surely I am Allah. La ilaha illa ana fa'budni. There is no God except me. Fa'budni, so worship me. As soon as Musa alayhi salam hears this, he gains courage, he gains some sort of bravery, and he goes out and he invites Fir'aun to Islam. And he goes to Fir'aun and his army and he openly declares to him that I am believing in Allah, you also believe in Allah. What does one hadith where Hazrat Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu, he mentions that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, him was sat there. And he says, Ya Aba Munzir, that tell me the greatest verse. Greatest verse from the Quran. What is the greatest verse from the Quran? Does anybody know? Ayatul Kursi, mashallah. So Hazrat Ubay ibn Ka'b, he sat there, and he started to think, what is the greatest verse? And then he starts to read, Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum. He starts to read this. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he hits him on his chest, like, mashallah, shabash. You know when we say that you've smashed it. And he goes, mashallah. And he says to him that this is the greatest verse. Why, when you look at this verse, why is this the greatest verse out of all the verses in the Quran? Thousands of verses. Why is it that only this verse has to be the greatest verse? When you look into the verse, Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum, we won't go into detail today, but when you look into this verse, you will see that it is all about monotheism. It is all about the tawheed and the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is about praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That there is no one besides Him who controls things. And when you get time, look into the translation. And you will see that this verse praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much. This is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to recite this verse out of salah around 8 times a day. Around 8 times a day. Part of the adhkar of salah, you must have seen here, that a part of the adhkar of salah is Ayatul Kursi. After every single salah, make a habit of reading this verse. and think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now we understand who Allah is. How should we call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I'll give an example. It's like the Prime Minister, you see him driving a car. And when you see the Prime Minister driving past and you want a lift, are you going to say to him that, oh driver, give me a lift? Or are you going to call him by his name? If the king is driving a car and you see him, are you going to call him driver? Or are you going to call him, narrate him, or call him by the word, your majesty? You're going to call him your king. You're going to use his title. In the same way, we use titles amongst each other. We should use the titles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi salam, when he wanted his gift and his kingdom, what does he say in the Quran? He says, قَالَ رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي وَهَبْ لِي مُلْكًا. He says, وَهَبْ لِي مُلْكًا. That he says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh my Lord, forgive me, رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي. And he says, وَهَبْ لِي مُلْكًا. وَهَبْ لِي مُلْكًا. And he says, لَا يَنْبَغِي لِأَحَدٍ مِّن بَعْدِي. And he says, give me this and bless me with this. Bless me with this kingdom. He doesn't just use Allah, bless me with this. But he's trying to say, وَهَبْ لِي مُلْكًا لَا يَنْبَغِي لِأَحَدٍ مِّن بَعْدِي إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْوَهَّابِ. And he says, surely you are the bountiful. That you are the one who can give me this. You are Al-Wahhab, who can give me an entire kingdom. So Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi salam used the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to call upon him in order for him to gain this kingdom that he had control over. And we all know Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi salam's power and his kingdom that he had control over. So now we understand who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in terms of why we should use his names. Let's go into a few names. And the first name I'd like to go into is the name Allah. The name Allah. There will be some technicality to it in order for us to understand what actually Allah means. Many scholars, they would say that Allah is just a name. It just exists. The name Allah is Allah and it means Allah. But many muhaddithin and mufassirin and the scholars have mentioned that there is a root word from this. There is a root word. And Arabic, it's a Semitic language, just like Farsi, Hebrew. These are all Semitic languages. And in Semitic languages, you have root words. And many words are derived from this root. In an example I'll give you is when you go to a shop which sells gold. And you go to the shop, they have gold rings, they have gold bangles, they have gold necklaces, they have gold earrings. And they have many different gold variety of items. But when it comes time to purchase these items, when you are going to buy this ring, when you are going to buy this bangle, it all boils down to one weight, and it comes to the weight of gold. So the root and the source of this ring, this earring, this bangle, this necklace, the root of all this is gold. That's why the jeweler who will be there, he will measure and weigh in gold. He will not look at if it's a ring, so this is the price. If it's a bangle, this is the price. He will focus on the root, the gold. In the same way in Arabic, in all the Semitic languages, many words will have root words. Many words will have root words. And from these root words, many words are derived. So they say, and we'll go into a bit of history, Hazrat Isa alayhi salam's time. Anybody know what language Hazrat Isa alayhi salam used to speak? Aramaic, okay, mashallah. Aramaic. In Aramaic, it sounds similar to Arabic, but the language Aramaic, the word ilah. So ilah, there was a word for Allah in that Aramaic language. And that word was Elohim. Elohim. In the Hebrew language is Yahweh. Yahweh. So you can see the similarities. Allah, Elohim, Yahweh. So you can see the similarities. This means that this word of Allah comes from a root word. And from that root word, these three words have been derived. Allah, Elohim, and Yahweh. And the root word, in many muhaddithin, they mention that the root word for Allah can be two things. Aliha ya'lahu or aliha ila shay. Aliha ya'lahu. And it comes from the word ilah. You know where we say la ilaha. So this word ilah. So the word aliha ya'lahu, it means when you are in awe of something. that when you see something, your jaw drops. When you see something, you are fascinated. And now you can see how this aliha ya'lahu connects to Allah. Because when we, inshallah, get the opportunity to see Allah in Jannah, and when we are on that day and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals Himself to us, we will not just be standing there, but our jaws will drop when we see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will be in awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we will be like, this is the most amazing thing that I have ever seen in my entire life. This is aliha ya'lahu. This is Allah. This is Allah. Aliha ila shay. What does this mean? It's an Arabic terminology that when a person is afraid of something, he goes and seeks protection. And when a person is in war and bullets are being fired at him, he will dig a hole and he will seek protection under this tunnel that he has dug. When a child is scared of something or somebody, they will crawl into the lap of their mothers for protection. This is aliha ila shay, that they are seeking protection. Allah is the same being that when the world is pushing us side to side, we go and seek protection to Allah. When we are on our knees and we are in trouble and difficulty, we go to Allah. When we have an illness, we go to Allah. When we are in troubles and difficulties, we go to Allah. When we have financial difficulties, we go to Allah. And every single thing that happens in our life, we go to Allah. This is Allah, my brothers. This is Allah. When you look into the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, anything that used to happen in his life, إِذَا حَزَبَهُ أَمْرٌ صَلَةٌ, that any difficulties or hardships used to come into the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the first thing he would do was go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and perform salah. The first thing he would do is perform salah. We have to look into our lives. What do I do? What do I do? Do I go and perform salah, or do I go do something else? Do I go perform salah, or do I go out and I think I'm a bit worried and stressed, I'll go out to eat with my friends. That will calm me down. I have some sort of financial difficulties. Do I go and pray my salah, or do I go out there and ask money, or go online and see how I can borrow money, get some loans, or do I start to do other things where I could possibly break the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because truly, if we truly knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Al-Razzaq, would we ever cheat our neighbors in some money? Would we lie on our job seekers forms or our forms that about me and my wife, and I would make things up in order for me to get £100 extra a month? If I had true trust in the providence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He is a Razzaq and He will provide to me, then would I go and lie? I would not go and lie. If I know and believe that Allah is Ar-Rahim, He is the most merciful, would I go to anyone else to ask for forgiveness, or would I go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If I knew and if I know that Allah is Al-Hadi, He is the one who can guide me, would I turn to Him when I have to make a difficult choice in my life? Or would I go to people first? Who would I go to first? Al-Hadi Himself, and ask Allah, you are Al-Hadi, you are the guider. Guide me. I am a bit confused in terms of choosing a spouse. Who would I go to? I am confused in this job opportunities. I have 2 jobs. Which one should I take? I am confused in what I should do and where should I go. Should I move abroad, or should I stay here local with my family and my mother and my father? What should I do? Allah, you are Al-Hadi, you guide me. This was the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what we should do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions in the Quran, He says, أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. That tell me about the one who has taken his ilah, his desire, as his God. That we have taken our nafs as our God. Allah Himself says this. And what does this mean? That the desires of ours, going out to eat, breaking the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doing some sort of haram, we have made this our ilah. That to please our wives, we will put the laws of Allah in the bin. To please our family, our children, we will put the laws of Allah in the bin. If we have to go to somewhere and do something haram, we will go do it just so it pleases our nafs. We are all prey to this. We have all fallen prey to this. and we need to realize that Allah is there. So if Allah is Al-Hadi, let's go into this word and this name, Al-Hadi. Al-Hadi is the guider. When we are traveling somewhere, we always need some sort of navigation. We'll put Google Maps on, somebody might use Waze, somebody might use any other thing. And we want to get to our destination. So I have a destination and I want to reach a place. If I was to get lost, I would ask someone, can you please guide me? Can you show me the way? I need to get to this place, this street, this person's house, this place, or this restaurant most of the times. So if besides Ramadan, unless people go after Iftari, inshallah. Okay. Anybody going after Iftari? No, after Tarawih, sorry. So Al-Hadi. So today everyone's like, Al-Hadi, please take me to the best takeaway tonight after, inshallah. So Al-Hadi is the one who is the guider. So we want to go to these places, so we go. And not only that we want to reach our destination, we actually want to go through the best way possible, the fastest way possible, the easiest way possible, so that it is at our convenience. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do the same thing for us. Our destination is Jannah. Our destination is the Radamandi and the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we want to gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah is the one who can guide us. Every day, in every salah, many a times, at least a minimum 17 times a day, we will be reciting Surah Al-Fatiha where we say, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. But until now, I myself have failed in this, that we have not realized what we are saying to Allah and what we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, guide me to the straight path. And we sometimes think that, I'm not even getting my guidance. And I'll give you some examples. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He told Fir'aun, and Fir'aun, what does he say? He goes to Fir'aun, he says, قَالْ فَمَنْ رَبُّكُمَا يَا مُوسَى فَمَنْ رَبُّكُمْ يَا مُوسَى. Fir'aun asks him, so who is your Lord, Musa? He says, قَالْ رَبُّنَا الَّذِي أَعْطَى كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَهُ. He says, my Lord is that being who has created everything. كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَهُ. And then what does he say? He says, ثُمَّ هَدَى. That He has created everything that you can see, and then He has guided everything. He has guided everything, every creature, every living thing, us, animals, jinns, everything that we can see, we cannot see as well. Allah has guided them. Take the salmon fish, for example. The salmon fish, they are born in fresh water. They are born in fresh water, in rivers. And when they are born, they travel along the streams, along the rivers, and they go out and reach out to the ocean. Now you can imagine how far this distance will be. Thousands of kilometers it travels, and it swims, and it reaches the ocean. That's very easy, just follow the current, going downstream all the way until you reach the ocean. But after a certain time it spends in the ocean, if it hasn't been caught by one of us for our meals, then it will try to return back to its birthplace. It will try to return back to its birthplace. And it will travel upstream, up these rivers. It will go through the current, and somehow it will make its way back to its birthplace. Scientists have still not figured out, is it some sort of electromagnetic current that directs them back to its place? Is it some sort of sense of smell that they have that directs them back to their place? That they go easily back to their place and they reach their birthplace where they die? They still haven't figured out what it is. But we believe in Allah, and we know it is Allah Al-Hadi, that He has guided this fish to travel all the way back. After being in the ocean, 3/4 of the world being water, it is out there and it guides itself back to its birthplace. The bees that you get honey from, that we use in our daily meals. And these bees, they go out there on a daily basis, go out there finding nectar and pollen in order for them to bring it back to the beehive. And the way they do this, the process of this, is that one bee, it goes out there and it does a scouting. And its job is to scout the areas where there is high level of pollen and high level of nectar. It goes there, it finds this place, and it returns back to the beehive. Now it's found its place. How does that bee direct and tell these bees that, okay, go to that place? There is no Google Maps for them. There is no book that, okay, the bee will get a pen and mark out, go here. They can't talk and they'll say, okay, go to next to Masjide-E-Saliheen, there's a bunch of flowers and you'll find loads of bee pollen and nectar. They'll all be like, why is Masjide-E-Saliheen? So the bees have this system within themselves which they call the waggle dance. It's called the waggle dance. So this scout that went out, it brings back some pollen. It will stand on the doorway of the beehive and it will start to do this thing called a waggle dance. And the waggle dance, it works in a very, I'd say, a cool way, which when I'll mention it to you, you'll also realize like this is amazing. That what it does is it moves the bottom part, the bottom of its body left and right, and it waggles it. But what it does is it starts to waggle. And then it turns left and it'll go round, back to the center. It'll waggle again and move forward and it'll turn round on the right hand side. So it's like a number 8, but in between it does a waggle. Each waggle represents a kilometer of distance. That if it does 10 waggles, that means it's 10 kilometers away from our beehive. And to direct that bee or those bees to the area of where the nectar and pollen is, it looks at the beehive. When the beehive is facing towards the sun, it's hanging off a tree. If the nectar and pollen is available 30 degrees to the right, the bee will turn 30 degrees to the right and direct all the bees that go in this direction, 30 degrees away from the beehive, and then it will show the distance of how much to travel. And not only that, it shows the bees the direction, it shows the bees the distance through the waggle dance, and then it has collected some nectar and pollen, which it has stored on top of him. So as the bees leave the hive, they will smell that nectar and pollen, and when they reach, they will know that this is the same familiar smell that scout provided to us. And that is when the whole army of bees will storm that area for nectar and pollen and bring it back for honey. This is Al-Hadi, my brothers. This is Allah, the Al-Hadi, the guide who has guided these bees to go and collect this nectar and pollen. Imagine this system didn't exist. Imagine if Allah had left them, that He كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَ, that He created everything. But ثُمَّ هَدَى didn't take place, the guidance did not take place. Where would these bees be? They would be in our homes looking for nectar and pollen. They would be in the masjid looking for nectar and pollen. They would be everywhere looking for their nectar and pollen. But do we see the bees in our way? They are not in our way. We can drive safely, we can walk safely. They go do their thing, they'll go to the nectar and the pollen, they'll return back to the beehive. Then they'll make another beehive, they'll make another beehive. And they make it and they leave it for us to use. This is Al-Hadi, my brothers. He guides the blind who cannot see to walk on the streets. He guides the mute who cannot talk to be able to communicate through sign language. He guides the parents to do tarbiyah of their children. He guides us to make difficult decisions. He guides the imam, he guides the teacher, he guides the leader, he guides the father, he guides the mother into doing everything that they need to do correctly. And he guides each and every single one of us into doing what we need to do. This is Al-Hadi, my brother. This is Al-Hadi. And Rasulullah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in a hadith, He says in a Quran verse, He says, وَإِن مِّنْ أُمَّةٍ إِلَّا خَلَا فِيهَا نَذِيرٌ. That I have not sent a group of people. وَإِن مِّنْ أُمَّةٍ إِلَّا خَلَا فِيهَا نَذِيرٌ. But I have not sent amongst them a warner, an individual who came to warn them. And this warner, my brothers, we take is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for us. The Quran is a warner for us. The Quran is the guidebook for us. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the way of his life, is the guide for us. And the guide is available. The guidebook is available. All it needs is us to go to the guidebook and ask the guider to guide us. And when we look into the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we don't just see on how he taught us to pray salah. We've taken all that information, we use it. We've taken the information on how to fast, we use that information. But we have forgotten the information of mu'ashara, how to live amongst each other. We have forgotten to take the information on how to do business. Because we feel we know how to do business. We have forgotten to take the information on how to prepare our children and do tarbiyah of our children. We have forgotten to take the information from this guidebook and the guide who came, who was sent to us on many matters of our life, and we feel that we have taken salah, we have done our hajj, we are doing our fasting, we are reading Quran, so I am a good Muslim. Do not limit hidayah to what you think it is. Hidayah is very vast. Hidayah is in every area of your life, and that is what Allah has destined for us. That He will guide us. If He can guide animals just the way I explained to you, imagine how He can guide us, my brothers. If He can guide animals, if He can guide a fish back to its birthplace, if He can guide these bees, how much guidance can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us? He will guide us every single day. And until now He has guided us, even without us asking. He guided us walking. These hands that we have, this body that we have, Allah is the one who guided me and us on how to use it. Allah is the one who guided us to make a fist. Allah is the one who guided us to be able to eat. That child that is born, who knows where to get its milk, that if that child does the suckle motion, it will receive its milk. How does this child, without any prior knowledge, know that the milk will come from this place? It is only Allah Al-Hadi who taught this child and guided this child that you suckle and you will get milk. Allah is Al-Hadi, my brothers. Allah is Al-Hadi. Now we know who Allah is. That Allah is the one who we should be in awe of. Allah is the one who we should be in love with. Allah is the one who we should sacrifice everything for. That if we have to sacrifice our lives, we are ready to sacrifice our lives for Allah. If we have to sacrifice our wealth, we will sacrifice our wealth for Allah. And today, and in the past 1 year, over 1.5 years, we have seen this live in the people of the Palestine, where they have sacrificed everything for Allah. Even today, you will see that they are sat there on top of rubble, on top of their homes. And they will be still talking about Allah. They have sacrificed life, they have sacrificed health, they have sacrificed wealth, they have sacrificed all the comforts of them, only for Allah. They know who Allah is. It is time we know who Allah is. So my brothers, Allah is Al-Hadi. Allah is Al-Hadi. One famous scholar, Fudail ibn Iyad, he was one of the leading scholars. But before he became one of the leading scholars, he used to raid caravans. He had too much masti in him. He used to go and raid people. He used to go rob people. One night he was going and he was climbing the wall to meet his lover. And whilst he was meeting his lover, he heard the verse in the background, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. He heard this verse. As soon as he heard this verse, he jumps off. He came down. And what does it say, this verse? أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Has the time not come for those? أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. For those who believe that their hearts turn towards dhikr and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As soon as he heard this, it shook him. He changed his life. Just this one verse that reminded him that he needs to go and remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It changed his life and he became one of the leading scholars in Islam. Just one verse of the Quran. We have read many verses of the Quran. We have heard many verses of the Quran. We have heard many scholars come to us and talk to us. But yet, many of us will agree that our lives still have not improved or still have not changed. And this is something we need to contemplate on, think about, and understand why is this happening. Have we locked our hearts? Have we put things away? Have we preferred our desires over what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us? And if this is the case, we need to remember Allah. We need to think of Allah. So Allah, my brothers, I will end here now. Allah is the one who we love. Allah is not just the being who is worthy of worship. Allah is the one who we will love. Allah is the only one who we will worship. Allah is the one who we will go to seek protection for. Allah is the one who we will go to seek guidance for. Allah is Al-Shafi. When we are ill, when we are hurt, we will go to Him for treatment, for cure. We will go to Him first. Allah is Al-Wahhab. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Wahhab. We will go to Him because He is the one who is the most bountiful. He is the one who will be able to give to me. Let us learn the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I hope I can learn the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And my brothers, I'll truly say, if we recognize Allah, everything will become easy in our lives. Everything will become easy in our lives. When we are working, we will be thinking about Allah. That will Allah be happy. You know, when you look into the Qur'ans, you will find the words, Indi, li, ana. Ana means I. Indi, me. Li is like I have. Indi, I have, sorry. That I have. Me. Ana, I. And these terminologies were used by who? By Qarun, by Fir'aun. These individuals use these terms. Today, so many times we use these terms. This is my car. We forget Allah gave it to me. This is me. I did this. I am the one who made this. Because of me, this business is at this position. Even in the state of the masjid, I am the one who built the masjid, we say. We forget Allah. These are the words and these are the statements and the keywords used by Fir'aun and Qarun. And today we have started to use these words. Why? Because we have not recognized Allah and we still don't know who Allah is. So let's make an intention. First, I'll make my intention that I go and learn on who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. That who is He? So I can recognize Him, and once I recognize Him, I will give my life for Him. Once I know who Allah is, I will give my life for Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the ability to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to become His friends. Never be scared to be making this dua. If Hazrat Ibrahim ﷺ was Khalilullah, let us make the same dua that I want to be your friend, O Allah. Make me amongst the waliullah. Don't be scared to sacrifice all our desires. Allah will take care of that. When we love Allah, we will love to sacrifice the desires. We will love to sacrifice watching football. We will love to sacrifice the things that we do on the weekends. We will love to sacrifice the haram that we have in our lives. Why? We have started to love Allah. And when we love someone, we do everything for them. We'll sacrifice everything for them. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from amongst the waliullah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah forgive us for everything that we have done. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for showing proudness and going against His wishes and His commands. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to act upon His laws. Ameen wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.